go. But yeah, we all good?
Yep. Cool.
Okay. Hi folks, on a blustery cyclonic day on the Gold Coast, Rachelle Armstrong is with me in the back of the ute, and it's actually a really special moment for me because January 5 years ago I was heading for a breakdown, and one of the first people I met with my regenerative journey was Rachelle at Nutrisoil Biologics in their worm casting shed.
Yep.
And so thank you for joining me. It's been great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm like stoked. I'm finally getting to be at the back of the ute. In the back of the ute, yeah.
That's right.
I'm excited.
So Rachelle, tell us now where your regenerative journey started. How did it all happen?
I did grow up on a farm, but I didn't see myself involved in agriculture. I guess like a lot of us, we just expected farming was a healthy, natural thing that just went on and made us food and everything was fine. I suppose we didn't see any problems. So my interest in life was in human health. So I studied health sciences at uni, and I was interested in nutrition and basically got I went broader though, bigger systems, and I studied public health. So yeah, I ended up in Sri Lanka for a few years as a volunteer, and I was trying to get in this nutrition line, but probably not being that effective. But I think that being in Sri Lanka helped me, really sort of see this whole population health, and I got to know that there was issues around topsoil being washed off and like the quality of vegetables grown, and so I probably didn't even know that there was different types of nutrition in vegetables back then. And then, eventually sort of came back to Australia and worked in community development as a youth and community development officer. Again, see, I always had this sort of bigger picture community, like population type thing. And then my father got me to help him edit a newspaper article that he was, that somebody had written on him, and it was written really terribly. And it was basically his story about how he was making this worm juice. So I sort of edited that, and I think at the same time went, actually this is pretty cool, and started seeing the connection between the way food's grown, and because he was highlighting some things there, and how this affects our health. So a couple more years over in Western Australia, and just sort of always been envious. I always felt like I wish there was, I could have a second life, because I'd go back home and I'd help Dad with this business. And fate had it. Eventually I did come home and started, getting involved. And I had no business training, and definitely, just growing up on the farm. I didn't, and I sort of thought, oh, what would I know in agriculture? But what I found in getting involved in like this regenerative, like we call it biological agriculture back then, is the more you know, the more you're trained in, the more you have to unlearn. So having a background in health was probably better for me to get involved in this space, because I see people with the most degrees and PhDs in the agriculture area having to sort of being challenged by having their views challenge themselves. So so a bit of a long way around, but that's how I got involved.
So when was it? Can you pinpoint an actual time when you went, wait a minute, I've studied health, this is food, my dad's doing worm juice and the biological side of farming. When was it was it sort of a gradual thing, or was it like a bang, oh wow, this is all connected?
Yeah, look, at the same time as my father was developing the getting excited about worms and seaweed and things like that, my mum was involved in a vitamin and mineral sort of supplement company, and she was coming up with all this research and basically telling us that we have to take all of these vitamins and minerals every day because it's not in our food. Right. So that's just crazy. So they had these business, so for them it was a farm / human health, type businesses coming together. And and she was sending us books and giving us all these stats and things. So I think that was at the moment where I just thought, well, this isn't right. Why should we be spending? And the doctors are saying, no, you should get all your nutrition from food. And there was, things weren't adding up, I suppose. And I always had asthma as a kid. And, I supposedly grew up on this healthy, farm. My father had a chemical accident on the farm. And so there was just all these indicators that the farm wasn't the healthy place that we assumed it would be. And then you start looking at, the way we're farming, with the chemicals and things like that. But, it was just during that period, I suppose, not one particular day.
Yeah. And your time in WA, how was that spent?
Yeah, so that's, I was a youth and community development officer for most of the time I was there. And I was working for a really small council, Shire of Nannup. And so basically looking at, it wasn't so much a health thing, it was community development. So that was, I guess, my first career move beyond being a volunteer in Sri Lanka. So it was where I got to really work in local government, and I actually think that's been really valuable, just to understand a little bit how government works. Sometimes we can be a bit like, brand government as, good or bad, mostly bad. People don't sort of talk about the good things. But what I learnt from being there and being part of that system, if you like, is that there's a whole lot of humans in there. So that have good intentions and that are trying to do good things. So I've always felt like I've got that insight to know that, it's often the organisations and systems that that we're stuck in that make it difficult to progress things, and not so much the actual people themselves. Yeah.
And that's really interesting, because I heard somebody, can't remember who it was, saying that once you relate consumers and people back into the farming industry, farmers are then aware of what they're doing more. So rather than producing the commodity, they're actually producing something for consumers.
Yeah.
And that does shift their way of thinking with regards to the chemicals and inputs and things, doesn't it?
Yep. Yeah, and look, and this is it. This is where I guess we're getting to these days. It's about connecting humans with what we're doing. Not, I think we've been on this race to, be professional and have big commercial systems, big agriculture and all this sort of thing, and we've just lost touch with how we relate to each other as humans and how food basically impacts us.
So you did go back to WA and start up soil restoration farming, and that's a little bit further down the line, but was that through the Nutrisoil field days and things like that?
Yeah, so it was always, we've always been based in northeast Victoria, but like what we were doing with Nutrisoil, so we had the product that we were selling, but for me, what I got really excited, I suppose what I was most passionate about, was the education. And so it was education and also the networking. So when we had educational events, it wasn't just the information that was given, it was the way, like I was really full on about getting feedback all the time. And often the farmers would say it's the conversations they had, in between. So it's, yes, they need the knowledge and education, but also the connection. So that was I think that was really my community development side coming in, bringing that into the business.
And so how did Dr. Christine Jones come on board?
Yes, so soil restoration farming was, it was a project with Dr. Christine Jones, where she was wanting to hold an event. It was actually the end of a project that she'd been running for years in Western Australia. And she just sort of saw my passion for putting on events, and we sort of teamed up and came up with this term. Both of us think the other person came up with soil restoration farming, so that's how, we used to have many of email through the night trying to sort of think about how to basically raise the profile. So it wasn't, so the education was there, but also raise the profile of the farmers that were successful in increasing carbon and farming, more biologically, because that's, what we used back then. So we were always in northeast Victoria, but we travelled over to Western Australia, and that whole thing about where you're more respected when you've come from a distance really played out in Western Australia. So we weren't over there, we were actually just travelling there all the time. And So it started off with that first, I guess like it was the end of a project of Christine's, but the start of soil restoration farming, for us. So that was, I don't know, it's more than 5 years ago. Yeah, it might be 6, 7 years ago that it started. So yeah, and so Nutrisoil was, one of the sponsors of soil restoration farming, but the idea was we got, 7, 8, 10 sometimes different companies that were like-minded to Nutrisoil, as in they really cared about getting the education out to the farmer. And yeah, we just believed if that was what we were like at Nutrisoil, that there'd be others like that. And it was a really good thing, because then you haven't got that whole product-driven education. It was just, you had a whole lot of different, and no company had the same product or services anyway, and farmers need a combination of different different things. And so that really built the first soil restoration farmers, so now we've got people that actually call themselves soil restoration farmers, and mostly in the West we had about probably 8 to 10 events, but it was all at the same time as being involved in
And so you've taken on that soil restoration farming to where you're at now.
Yes, so we officially moved away from the business last year with Nutrisoil and this year we explored a few different things, but we've ended up picking up soil restoration farming and giving it a whole new business model, I suppose. So it wasn't, I used to call it an unofficial not-for-profit before. Basically, we just ran at, break even when we put on events. So yeah, that was never going to be a successful business model to keep, a sustainable business model, if you like. We completely brainstormed and looked at what's needed now in agriculture, because
what you came up with was really unique.
I was going to say, because that education that we were doing back then was I'm quite confident was what was needed then, and it's just being done really well now though. And now with online, you can get hold of Christine Jones' talks for free, in many shapes and forms, long, any amount of hours on our great leaders, like educational leaders and scientists all over the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the quite costly, plane, flights and travel and accommodation and hire cars and everything that you used to put on to be able to deliver a day's education, for $100 for the farmer. That's, I guess it's, we still need those in-person events, but it just, it's not a sustainable business model to sort of keep going like that.
No, you need something else to back up, so that's your solid part.
Yeah.
And so just explain then what it is. What are you
Okay, so the experience that we had at these events, no matter which event and how, whether it was half a day, 1 day or 3 days, we always found the farm, somebody would say in the question time, but where do we start? And it used to be frustrating to me, because I think, like, you've just been given, all of this information. The idea is that you take it home and apply it. And then you'd have people say, well, this won't work in my area, or this doesn't, this is only, for pastoralists, it won't work in cropping, and all these sorts of things. And I think a lot of people would attest to the frustration in that, but it's not a cookie cutter, it's not a set thing, farming. You pick out that bit of inspiration and you apply it this way. So what I'm getting to is farmers just, it seems like they need, or some farmers need just that little bit more help to know how to apply things. And then, we're always looking for what we call, I think we just came up with the term biological agronomists, and wish that they're out there. And we found it quite hard to find people that would be able to help the farmer in a way that would get them on this journey without basically just telling them what to do. Because that, that would just be like the old model, like tell them what to do. If it doesn't work, they'd say, oh, well, that advice wasn't good, and there's a lot more sort of, I guess, critical thinking involved in and observation in farming this way. So, getting to the point is we decided that we also observed that there was plenty of people that wanted to actually be in that role, like passionate about working with farmers, whole systems thinkers, and keen to regenerate people's businesses, their mindsets, and their land as well. And we just needed, they were on their own. So they were either working as agroecologists and things like that, or they were, wanting to work in that area but doing something else, for an income. And so we, got about 10 people together, and yourself included, Tamsin, back in June, I think it was, and we did a pilot program to see whether there could be a benefit of a community of coaches and consultants, to actually bring them together. And the idea initially was a community of support, and everybody said, straight away, yep, this is something that is missing, that they actually need to bring people together. But what it's emerged into, so we had our 6-week pilot program with people from Queensland, New South Wales, Tasmania, New Zealand in that first set, but and then we started the actual paid community 1st of September, first day of spring. But what it's emerged into is actually, building sort of skills around coaching and consulting as well as a community of support. And the way we see it, like we call it emergent, emergent because it's like it's got to meet the needs of the people in the community, that it feels at the moment there's unlimited of areas that we could delve into that's going to really build the capacity of people to go out and help farmers. So the difference of the model is that we don't own these, it's not like people are becoming, they can call themselves soil restoration farming coaches, but they run their own businesses. So it's completely independent. They pay to be in the community, but everything they do as a consultant or coach beyond that is, there's no taking percentages of their earnings and things like that, like, other models like the franchise,
Yes.
So.
And I think this type of business and the support and what you're offering is the way forwards into our future, because especially if you are channeling your energy down in the regenerative side of things, no matter what it is, whether it's your business, whether it's you, whether it's your health, your family, your farm, if you work in an office, even everywhere, anywhere, we have to start getting off this mechanical thinking. And we have to start collaborating, and purely collaborating for the greater good. But at the same time, we've always got to be mindful that we need to earn a living. And we need to protect our health. Health is number one. If you don't have health, you don't get out of bed. And I think there's, like you said at the beginning, there was too much emphasis on something else. And so with this soil restoration farming, it's a brilliant way to help people not understand regenerative stuff, but to give that, if there's an area where you're sort of lacking, because it is such a huge area.
It might be fear of, how to charge or, to earn money. That's a big one.
Yes, And dealing with that in an environment that is safe. And it is safe to fail. Graham Hand, when he said that, safe to fail sites, put safe to fail. I never heard it explained like that. I know that it's okay to fail because you're not really failing, you're learning. But safe to fail in a group where we're all supporting each other, it's fantastic. It's a really, really good business model.
And I think 4 months in, looking back on the experience so far, everybody's had their wobbly moments, we've, and it's just important that we don't have them all at once, because I think that's probably unlikely to happen. But there's a real sense of support that is not, it just happens naturally. I think it's not mechanical, as in like, right, if this happens, we'll, we follow this flow chart of things. It's just natural that people check in, noticed you weren't, firing on all 8 cylinders today, Tamsin, sort of thing. Like, people are just sort of checking on each other. So that's important. But everything, I think what's cool about it is everything that we're doing to support each other is a model of what we need to do to support our farmers. Because they're isolated. And we need to sort of find ways of supporting them, and it's never going to be a one size fits all. So, I mean, basically, sometimes talking about all this, you say, so what is soil restoration farming? I mean, our purpose is to heal the planet through agriculture. And our mode of doing that is through connection. So at the moment, we're connecting coaches and consultants with each other. And that's building them, to the resilience and strength, the next level to be able to go out and then help farmers to be able to do that. I mean, many of them are already working with farmers, but then they don't have anyone to come back to because they're working in, sole trader businesses. Come back to sort of bounce things off that they're dealing with. So, yeah.
Well, it's going to be a really interesting year this year for both the soil restoration farming and because of the lack of nitrogen that we're all about to start facing.
Yeah.
So if anybody's there that needs some support, contact Rachelle because seriously, she's there, she knows people, there's a whole network across Australia and New Zealand and probably throughout the world really.
Well, that's the thing. So we've got our core, community. So that we've got our coaching community. So anyone that's interested to be involved in that, as I said, we're not teaching necessarily the regenerative principles. There's an assumption that people come with knowledge that regenerative agriculture is the way forward. So so that's already there. So we've got our core community, but then we've got our field of support beyond our community that we collaborate with, and that's global for sure. Like we've got Joel Salatin coming to be our thought leader this month, which we're pretty excited about. We don't want to sell the whole community just on Joel Salatin, but just a bit excited about that. So we've got people like of that caliber that totally want to support what we're doing because it's different. There's nothing quite the same. So yes, and as you say, people can get in contact with us if they're looking for this sort of support on their farm. So a coach who doesn't tell them what to do, but actually helps them work through what's important to them and what's going to work for them.
Thank you so much, Rachelle.
It's all right.
I've learnt so much more about you.
I literally forgot the camera was on.
Awesome, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, and safe trip through the cyclonic conditions back home.
That should be exciting. Awesome.